I never thought I would die in a foreign land, alone, breathless and unseen, far from my wife Marilyn, far from my son Marco, far from everything familiar. But what's even more terrifying than death is what comes after. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what would happen if all the secrets of this world were suddenly laid bare? What if right now, without warning, your soul was ripped away from your body, and you were brought face to face with the one who sees everything? Would you survive the truth? It happened to me on July 29th, just a few days ago. And even now, as I sit in this hospital room in Istanbul, I'm still trembling from what I saw. I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can barely look into my own eyes in the mirror because I now know what's coming, and it's not just a feeling or a dream. No. This is a divine warning, and it's for you, for the Philippines, for the whole world. They said I died for 6 minutes, no pulse, no brain activity. But while the machines in the ICU screamed and the nurses ran to save me, I was already gone. My body lay on the stretcher, but my spirit had been taken somewhere else. Somewhere terrifying, somewhere sacred. And in that place, I was shown 5 events that will begin this very month, August 2025. Before I go on, I need to say this. I am not a prophet. I am not a preacher. I'm a 58-year-old accountant from Quezon City. I went to church on Sundays, yes, but mostly because it was expected. I prayed when things were hard. I tithed when I remembered. But God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, I believed, yes, but from a distance. I had let my faith become background noise. And that's why this shook me so deeply. Because what I saw was not a dream. It wasn't something my oxygen-deprived brain cooked up. No. This was realer than real. I saw things unfold on this earth that made my heart break and my knees buckle. I saw churches burn not with fire but with scandal. I saw children falling to their knees while adults cursed at the sky. I saw light, a holy, brilliant, otherworldly light, separating people not by race, not by wealth, not by religion, but by the true condition of their hearts. Let me be clear. This is not just a testimony. This is not a feel-good story to warm your heart. This is a warning, and I believe God has chosen you to hear it because there is still time. Barely. I remember the very moment it all began. The street was hot. Istanbul in July is a furnace, and I had just finished a long day auditing financial records for a multinational firm. I was walking back to my apartment, sweat pouring down my back, when suddenly everything shifted. The buildings around me blurred. The air became thick. My chest collapsed inward like someone had slammed a sledgehammer into my ribs. I tried to call for help, but no sound came out. I fell forward straight onto the pavement, and then darkness. But not the kind of darkness you'd expect. No, this was a silence so loud, a void so full, I thought I had entered another dimension, and in the middle of that dimension there was a figure, standing, waiting, watching me with eyes that knew my every sin, and yet loved me still. And then he spoke.
Elijah, you have lived your life seeking order numbers, reason, but now you stand before the source of all truth. I have brought you here because time is short. What you will see must be shared.
In that moment, I knew who he was. There was no doubt. This was Jesus. Not the Jesus from paintings, not the one hung on necklaces, but the living Son of God, burning with holiness, yet filled with infinite compassion. He didn't scold me. He didn't accuse me. He looked into my soul, and everything I had ever hidden came undone. That's when the visions began. That's when I saw the five events that are coming this August, one after the other, like dominoes falling toward the edge of eternity. I'll tell you everything, every terrifying, beautiful, soul shaking detail. But first, you need to know this is not about religion. This is about the condition of your heart because no one, no priest, no pastor, no influencer will be able to save you when these things begin. Only Jesus can. And he is coming. Before all this, I lived a simple, predictable life. You know, the kind wake up, check your phone, sip coffee while half listening to the morning mass on TV, then head to work like a robot programmed to meet deadlines and chase invoices. My name is Elijah de Castro. I was born in Quezon City, raised by a mother who prayed the rosary every night, and a father who worked two jobs just to keep the lights on. I went to Catholic school, graduated from Ateneo with a degree in accounting, married my college sweetheart Marilyn, and raised our son Marco the best way I knew how. We weren't rich, but we had enough. I had a stable job, a paid off car, and a dog named Simba who barked at every delivery man like it was his sacred duty. But despite all the boxes being checked, something in me had grown hollow. Maybe it was the routine. Maybe it was the compromises I made at work, the under the table audits, the client adjustments I justified as survival. Maybe it was the spiritual dryness I didn't have the words to explain. Church had become a habit, not a home. Prayer became a last resort, not a lifestyle. I believed in Jesus, yes, but I treated him like a background app, always running, never opened. When I accepted the short term contract in Istanbul, I told Marilyn it was just for 6 months. Para lang makadagdag sa retirement fund. I told her, truth is, I wanted to escape. I wanted silence. I wanted to feel like I was still needed somewhere. I didn't expect anything extraordinary. I certainly didn't expect to die there. But Jesus knew. That night, just hours before my heart gave out, I had been thinking about Marco. He hadn't replied to my last message. He was always so busy with his PhD work in Tokyo. I remember praying softly before bed, almost out of guilt, Lord, help my son, keep him safe, and help me make it through this contract. It was short automatic, like putting coins in a vending machine. But Jesus heard even that tired mechanical prayer.
I heard you when you whispered from an empty place. Even when your prayers were shallow, my love for you remained deep. I never left you, Elijah.
You know, when you're in the presence of someone who knows everything, the pride, the private thoughts, the years of compromise, you expect judgment, fire, shame. But instead, he gave me grace. And that grace reached all the way back to the version of me that used to be hungry for God, the young man who once stayed up all night reading the Gospels, the husband who used to lead prayer before dinner, the father who used to anoint his son's forehead with oil when he was sick. I had let life numb me, but he had not forgotten, he had not moved.
You have been living in a world of shadows, but I am calling you into light. This is not the end of your story. Elijah, this is your awakening.
In that moment, I realized something tragic. You can be alive and still be asleep. You can sing worship songs but not hear heaven. You can go to church every Sunday and still miss the voice of God. I did for years. But now I was wide awake. And Jesus was about to show me why he brought me back. I remember the heat, not just the weather, but a heaviness pressing against my chest as I stepped out of the office that evening. Istanbul was still buzzing with traffic vendors shouting the distant call to prayer echoing through the minarets. I had just finished auditing a batch of overdue reports, my head pounding from the numbers, my body begging for rest. But I was stubborn. I didn't want to take a taxi. I wanted to walk. I told myself I needed the air. But something was wrong. Halfway down the block, the sky shifted. The street noise dulled like someone had turned down the volume of the world. My vision blurred and a strange buzzing filled my ears. I took one more step, then everything inside me collapsed. My heart, my very center squeezed shut like a fist. My knees buckled. My arms flailed as I fell forward the pavement, rushing up to meet my face. And then nothing, or so I thought. Because while the people around me screamed, and a nurse from a nearby pharmacy rushed out with a defibrillator, my spirit had already been pulled away, lifted up, separated. It was like my soul had unzipped from my body. I could see myself lying there motionless, but I felt no fear, no panic, only stillness. And then I was no longer hovering above Istanbul. I was somewhere else entirely. A realm unlike anything I had ever imagined, neither dark nor bright, neither earth nor sky. It was like floating in a place made of living light. The colors shimmered like morning dew on glass, soft but alive. There were no walls, but I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel a presence, vast, holy, unshakable. And then I saw him. He didn't walk into view, he was simply there. One moment I was surrounded by light, the next the light had taken form. He didn't look like the paintings we see in churches. He wasn't pale, and he didn't have long shampoo commercial hair. He looked like someone who had lived in the Middle East, like someone who had walked dusty roads and wiped the tears of the broken with his bare hands. His eyes, oh God, his eyes held eternity. They weren't condemning, they weren't proud. They were the eyes of someone who had waited years for me to finally look up. He didn't speak with his lips, but I heard him clearly in the deepest part of me.
Elijah, son of grace, you have been caught between duty and distance, between faith and fatigue, but now you stand before truth.
I tried to speak, I wanted to cry, I wanted to hide, but I couldn't, because I wasn't in a body anymore. I was only being, my soul exposed, my thoughts laid bare. Yet in his gaze there was no shame, only clarity, as if every regret, every compromise, every lie I had told myself was being gently peeled away.
You are here because I love you, not because you are perfect, not because you earned it, but because mercy found you on the edge of death.
Suddenly, the space around us shifted. It wasn't a place in the earthly sense, it was more like a canvas of spirit. I could feel truth moving through me like light through glass. I saw moments of my life flash, not in a cliche, life flashing before your eyes kind of way, but with deep spiritual meaning. I saw the time I yelled at Marilyn over something petty and how it wounded her heart more than I knew. I saw the nights I ignored God's whisper to pray. I saw every time I closed my Bible early, every time I chose numbers over Nehemiah's spreadsheets, over surrender. And yet he was still standing there.
I have called you here not for your death, but for your return. You must see what is coming, and then you must speak.
Then everything around us shifted again. It felt like time folded in on itself. I stood on what looked like a mountaintop, but it wasn't Mount Apo or Sinai or any place I'd seen before. Below us was the entire earth, but seen not through satellite images or maps. It was a tapestry of light and darkness, currents of prayer, grief, pride, worship, addiction, lust, forgiveness, flowing through nations like invisible rivers.
Look closely. Elijah, what you see is the spiritual condition of humanity. I will show you 5 signs, 5 events that will shake the foundations of earth before this month ends.
I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to understand how or why I had been chosen, but the only thing I could do was watch, because what came next would change everything. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even think in the way I used to, because when you stand in the presence of truth himself, words become dust. Logic melts like wax before a flame. Everything I thought I knew about God, about life, about what it means to be a good person, was suddenly shattered by the overwhelming realness of Jesus. He didn't need to prove anything. He was the proof. His presence carried the weight of galaxies, yet wrapped around my heart like the warmth of my mother's voice when I was a child. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing, I wasn't analyzing, I wasn't explaining myself, I was simply known and still loved.
You have walked in shadows, Elijah, not because you chose evil, but because you chose what was easy. You have loved convenience over communion duty over devotion, but I have seen your heart.
And suddenly he showed it to me, my own heart. It appeared before us not as a physical organ, but as a spiritual core, beating, trembling, but weighed down by layers of fear, busyness, pride, and numbness. I saw years of spiritual sleep, of going through motions without hunger. I saw how I'd excused my coldness as maturity, my distance as balance, my passivity as being realistic. Tears flooded my eyes, though I no longer had a body to cry with. In that moment, I wanted to scream, Lord, I'm sorry. I wasted so much time. But he already knew.
You are not here to be condemned, but to be commissioned. I am not calling you out. I am calling you up.
The light around him intensified, and I began to feel something enter me, not into my flesh, but into my purpose. It was like a seal, a stamp, a divine fingerprint placed on the very reason I was created. I had never felt so small and yet so seen. Then, with a sweep of his hand, the space transformed. The mountain top returned. Earth below shimmered like living glass, with ribbons of gold and gray spiraling across continents. He pointed toward a region glowing with tension where prayers rose and curses collided. I recognized it instinctively, the Middle East.
The world stands at a crossroads. You will witness 5 events before this month ends. They have been written in heaven long before men drew their maps. Each one is a mercy and a dividing line.
I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel ready. My voice trembled within me, though I still had no mouth to speak. Why me, Lord?
Because you have seen enough to know the difference between noise and truth, and you have nothing left to lose but everything to give.
He showed me faces, not just in the Philippines, but across the world. Children in squatter areas kneeling in prayer. A widow in Baguio lighting a candle and whispering, Come, Lord Jesus. A group of young men in Manila throwing their vape pens into the Pasig River as they wept under the weight of conviction. An influencer in Cebu deleting her old content and starting over with a single message, Jesus changed me.
My sheep know my voice. When you speak my words, they will hear. The world will laugh, but the hungry will listen.
He drew near. His hand, marked with scars that radiated light, reached toward me and touched what felt like the very core of who I am. And when he did, a surge of clarity rushed through me. I saw dates, places, faces. I saw 5 specific events lined up like dominoes, each one closer than the last, each one carrying both beauty and judgment, a warning and a window of grace.
When these signs begin, the doors will swing open, but only for a little while. Tell them I am coming.
And then the first vision began. The atmosphere changed again. The mountain we stood on, if it could even be called that, expanded beneath our feet like a living platform, giving us a clear view of the earth below. I didn't just see the world, I felt it. Every continent vibrated with spiritual frequencies, some glowing with worship, others groaning with deception. Jesus turned his face toward the horizon, and in that timeless silence he raised his hand.
Behold Elijah. What has been foretold shall now be shown. 5 events, written before the foundations. They shall unfold before this month fades.
The first event, the unearthed truth. Suddenly we were above a desert, sandy, ancient, trembling with buried secrets. I recognized the region Jericho. There were tents, excavation tools, and a small group of archaeologists brushing away centuries of dust. One of them let out a cry and fell to his knees. They had uncovered a clay container wrapped in old linen and sealed with a wax symbol shaped like a fish. Inside were fragments of scrolls, a carved cup, and a weather-worn tablet etched in Aramaic, "He is alive, he has overcome." The air around the site became thick with awe. Even those who didn't believe began to tremble.
This will be the first crack in the wall of unbelief, the proof of my earthly walk unmistakable, undeniable, unstoppable.
News spread like wildfire. I saw breaking headlines, pastors on their knees, even university professors in the Philippines admitting they had been wrong. In a high school classroom in Davao, students wept openly as their teacher read the translation of the inscription aloud. In Iloilo, a quiet Catholic nun burst into worship shouting, "He lives!" But not everyone rejoiced. I saw media moguls panicking. I saw political consultants whispering frantically in corridors. They were trying to contain what could not be contained.
Truth is a flood. They will try to dam it with lies, but my waters shall rise.
The second event, the great spiritual shaking. The vision shifted. Churches filled my view, cathedrals, small chapels, massive arenas pulsing with music and lights. It looked glorious until it began to tremble. One by one, platforms cracked, spotlights dimmed, false shepherds were pulled from their pulpits as financial crimes and hidden sins were exposed. In Quezon City, I saw a large church split overnight when its pastor's secret lifestyle came to light. But I also saw something breathtaking: small home gatherings multiplying in places like Tagaytay, Bohol, and Cotabato. Simple worship, raw hunger, no branding, just Jesus.
I am not punishing my bride. I am preparing her. The games are over. The real ones will remain.
I saw believers meeting in carinderias under trees beside rivers. They didn't need sermons. They needed his presence, and it came like wind. The third event, the light that divides. Then we stood in space, hovering far above Earth. And I saw it, a being made of pure light moving with intention from beyond the stars. It positioned itself between the Earth and the sun. For just over 2 hours, the sunlight that reached our planet changed. It became golden, sharp, penetrating, alive. And with it came division. Children in Samar started singing in tongues. A young girl in Cebu began prophesying without ever learning how to pray aloud. In hospitals, people rose from beds. In school, students broke into tears without knowing why. But in the same hours, others screamed. Some became violently ill. Some locked themselves in closets, unable to bear the light.
This light carries my frequency. It will reveal what is hidden. It will awaken the hungry and disturb the hardened.
Some denied it. Scientists called it a solar irregularity, but even they knew they were not in control. The fourth event, the unveiling of the mighty. Then we stood above boardrooms, parliaments, and mega-church green rooms. And I watched as information flooded the digital world, emails, messages, records appearing out of nowhere. I saw political leaders, entertainers, and spiritual authorities caught in webs they thought were erased. Some tried to blame hackers, but I saw the truth. Angels were moving like electricity, through cables, through servers, through screens.
What was done in the dark shall be revealed by light. I am reversing the order. The low shall be lifted, the high shall fall.
I saw a janitor from General Santos suddenly promoted to city council after videos surfaced of his quiet, faithful acts over decades. A widow in Tacloban who spent her life caring for orphans was invited to speak before senators, and the people watched, shocked, silenced. Some repented, others raged. The fifth event, the final harvest, and then the fire came. It wasn't destruction, it was glory. I saw people in every religion encountering Jesus directly. A Muslim woman in Cagayan de Oro had a vision of him while sweeping her home. A Buddhist in China dropped his incense and wept. An atheist in London fell to the ground at the sound of his voice. In Manila, a former gang member stood in Luneta Park and declared, "I met him. He's real."
This is not revival. This is revelation. I am visiting hearts, not stages. I am calling my laborers from the streets, the slums, the silent places.
I saw influencers deleting their channels, athletes kneeling during interviews, artists burning all work and beginning again with nothing but worship. But I also saw resistance, pastors who felt threatened, governments who tried to censor testimonies, false miracles confusing many.
You shall know them by their fruit. Repentance, compassion, humility, love. These are my mark.
And finally, I saw a global map with lights igniting across every land, forming a web of flame that pulsed as one body. The Philippines, it glowed like fire on water.
This is my final invitation before the doors close. Tell them the time is now.
5 signs, 5 mercies, 5 dividing lines. As the final vision faded, I turned to Jesus, heart burning, spirit broken, soul awakened. And what came next was the return. The mountain faded, the light receded. His voice, the voice that had shaken galaxies yet soothed my trembling soul, was the last thing I heard before I was pulled back.
Go, Elijah. Speak what you have seen. I will be with you.
And then I woke up. There was no slow drifting back. It was as if I had been dropped from eternity into a body made of weight and pain and limitation. The first thing I noticed was the sound beeping monitors, soft sobs, a nurse whispering, "He's breathing, he's back." I blinked against the harsh hospital light. My chest felt like it had been crushed. My throat was dry. I looked to my right and saw her Marilyn, my wife, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling as they held mine like she never wanted to let go. "Elijah," she whispered, her voice cracking like glass, "you were gone." Doctors told me later I had no pulse for over 6 minutes. No brain activity, no oxygen. They called it impossible, a miracle. But the strangest part, I wasn't even in the ICU where I collapsed. I had been moved to another wing entirely because they had declared me clinically dead. Dr. Ramos, a Filipino cardiologist working in Istanbul, shook his head again and again as he flipped through the charts. "This makes no sense," he muttered. "You should not be sitting here fully alert, speaking coherently. At your age, 6 minutes without oxygen, your brain should be—" He stopped himself, but I finished his sentence for him. "Damaged." He nodded slowly. But I wasn't damaged, I was changed. That first night I didn't sleep. Marilyn stayed by my side, clutching my hand, sometimes brushing my forehead with her palm, like she was checking if I was real. I didn't tell her everything immediately. How could I? How could I explain that I had stood before Jesus, that I had seen the future of the world, that I had been marked for something far beyond tax returns and audit deadlines? Marco, our son, flew in from Tokyo the next day. He walked into the hospital room with eyes full of questions. A researcher trained in logic and data, he had always been the rational one. He listened quietly as I tried haltingly to explain what happened. At first he said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly and spoke like a man trying to protect me from myself. "Dad, He said gently, "You had a near-death experience. Oxygen deprivation can cause hallucinations. The brain does strange things when it's under trauma. It's not uncommon." I smiled, not with anger, with a kind of quiet grief, because I knew he didn't understand. How could he? I had seen stars sing. I had heard truth roar like thunder. I had stood in the arms of mercy. No dream, no chemical surge could imitate that. Still, I said nothing more. Not then. I knew I would tell him again in time. Not with explanations, but with evidence. With how I lived. That night, while Marilyn slept, curled up in the visitor's chair, and the room grew still, I sat up and looked at my arm, the one where the IV had been. There was a mark. It wasn't a bruise, it wasn't a scar, it was like a faint shadow, the shape of light imprinted on skin. No one could explain it. None of the nurses remembered putting anything there. I touched it softly, and that's when I heard him again, not with my ears, but in my spirit.
You are sealed, Elijah, not for glory, but for obedience. This is not for status. This is for service.
Tears welled up in my eyes as I whispered back, "Lord, I don't know how to do this." And he answered gently,
I will teach you.
Something changed in me after that night. Not just physically, though. Even the doctors admitted my heart seemed stronger than expected. Not just mentally, though my thoughts were clearer, my mind calmer. But something in my spirit had shifted. It was like my soul had been cracked open and something holy had poured in. I couldn't look at the world the same way anymore. The news felt heavier. The laughter on sitcoms sounded hollow. Even food tasted different, not because it lacked flavor, but because it no longer distracted me. I would sit by the window in the hospital room and watch the sunlight pass through the glass, and I would cry. Not because I was sad, but because I had seen light that made even the brightest day feel dim. When I was finally discharged, the nurses said things like, "It's amazing you recovered so quickly, sir," or "You're really lucky, Mr. De Castro." But I wasn't lucky. I was sent back, and every breath I took was now borrowed time on assignment. The first thing I did when I returned to my apartment was kneel. No phone, no distractions. I knelt on the cold tile floor, laid my face to the ground, and whispered, "I'm listening." And his voice came not loud but steady.
Start where you are. Speak what you know. I will handle who listens.
I started small. I told Marilyn first. Really told her. Every detail. She sat in silence the entire time, her hands folded, tears streaming down her cheeks. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "So this is why you came back." She believed me. She didn't understand everything, but she believed me. Marco was different. He wanted proof. He asked me to write everything down. So I did. Day after day, I poured the visions into a journal, pages filled with trembling handwriting and verses that came to mind as I wrote. One night, Marco came into the room while I was reading the Gospel of John. He asked quietly, "Dad, do you really think all those events will happen this month?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Some of them already have." He didn't respond. But I noticed he lingered near the window for a long time that night, staring up at the stars. I knew seeds had been planted. I started sharing with others, just a few friends at first. Most were confused. Some were uncomfortable. A few even left. One man told me, "You sound like one of those doomsday people on YouTube." I smiled and replied, "It's not doom I saw, it's mercy. Mercy that comes before the door closes." Some called me brave, but honestly, I was just afraid of silence, because now silence wasn't empty. It was filled with his voice. He would speak to me in the quiet.
When you feel alone, remember, Moses stood alone. Noah built alone. John cried out alone. But I was with them, as I am with you.
Sometimes the old me would try to creep back in. I would hear thoughts like, "Maybe you imagined it. Maybe it was just a dream." But then I would feel the mark on my arm, that strange faint impression that pulsed with warmth when I prayed. a reminder that my body may have left the mountain, but part of my spirit still lived in what I saw. I started waking up early just to sit with God. Reading the Word no longer felt like duty, it felt like dialogue. I would ask questions and verses would leap off the page with answers. I'd walk through the streets of Istanbul watching people rush past each other, and I'd want to cry, "You don't know what's coming, please wake up." But I didn't shout. I whispered. And somehow in that whisper, I began to see people listening. A janitor at the building I worked in asked me, "Sir, why do you look like you're glowing?" I smiled and replied, "Because I saw something that cannot be unseen." He said, "Can you tell me?" So I did. That was the beginning. I don't know how many will believe. I don't know how far this message will go, but I know this.
You are not responsible for their response, only for your obedience.
And so I obey, day by day, word by word, even when it's hard, even when I'm tired, even when no one claps, because I didn't come back to be popular. I came back to be faithful. I have never been more alive, and I have never felt the weight of time more heavily than now. The days are moving faster, the nights are louder, the world feels like it's rushing towards something, and most people are too distracted to notice. But I notice, because I have stood in the place where time bends, where history and prophecy breathe the same breath, and I was told clearly what is coming. Not one day, not in the distant future, this very month. I was shown 5 signs, not metaphors, not vague impressions, real global events that will divide this world like wheat and chaff. And now as I watch the days unfold, I can already sense it beginning. The first event shook the world's confidence in its doubt, a discovery so undeniable that even the proud must look again. The second shattered the stage faith we had built, exposing falsehood and making room for purity. The third brought a heavenly light that made every human heart visible, some repenting, others running. The fourth tore the curtains down, revealing corruption that once ruled in silence. And the fifth, oh, the fifth, it lit a fire of revival not driven by campaigns or conferences, but by Christ Himself, touching souls face to face. And it's not over. I believe more is coming in these final days of the month. That final rush, that final cry from heaven before the shaking turns into judgment. But I didn't come back just to predict events. I came back to ask you a question. Are you ready? Not ready in your schedule, not ready in your religious routine, but ready in your soul. Because what I saw, what I heard, what I felt from Jesus, it was not for my comfort. It was for this moment, for your heart. I am speaking now not just as Elijah, a husband and a father. I am speaking as one who has stood in glory and been told to return with a message, and I must deliver it faithfully, no matter the cost.
Tell them that their Messiah has come, is coming, and shall come again. I have kept my promise to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and to them. The time of fulfillment is here.
That's why I'm writing this. That's why I'm sharing it with whoever will listen. You don't need to believe me, but you must respond to Him. Because when these signs are complete, the door will close. Just like in the days of Noah. Just like in the days of the first Passover. There is a window, a divine opening for mercy to flood your soul, your family, your community. But windows don't stay open forever.
My sheep know my voice. I am calling to them in this hour, through dreams, through signs, through messages like this one. And they who hear must not delay. What you have seen is not for you to keep. It is a fire to pass on. Speak, Elijah, until I return.